So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning here in Eastern Coast and evening in Pakistan and anywhere else in between. My name is Shahid Rafiq. I'm a neurologist by profession and practice in Maryland near Washington, D.C. And I'm the co-chair of APPNA Merit. Like Babar, me, and Danish, we're the same team for the past 12 years. And at this point, Danish is our chair. We have been doing lectures, education, research. Then we pivoted towards capacity building of different hospitals, different institutions, from Lady Reading Hospital to Rawalpindi Medical University to NUMS, National University of Medical Sciences. And in last year, from last year, we pivoted to our last acronym. So MERIT stands for Medical Education, Research, and International Training and Transfer of Technology. So we never thought of transfer of technology, although it was in our acronym, an acronym of MERIT, but we never really thought about it, worked on it. So from last year, we started working on it. How can we transfer the technology and initiatives and innovations in healthcare that we see here? And to our surprise, a pleasant surprise, a lot of Pakistani scientists, Pakistani entrepreneurs were already working on it. So we joined them, we collaborated with them. Some initiative we are doing of our own, but we welcome any scientist, startups to contact us so that we can strengthen them in any way possible. It includes not only our professional expertise that we got over the last 20, 30 years here in North America, but also monetarily. So with that introduction of MERIT, I would like to introduce our esteemed and honorable guest today, Mr. Abdul Hameed, Consular in Toronto, is a graduate of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in US. He worked in various capacities during the last 23 years at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Islamabad. He served in the ministry as Director, United Nations, Director, Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs, and Director, China, Japan, and Koreas. He was also a research associate in the Institute for the Study of Diplomacy in Georgetown, University of Washington, which is one of the premier institution for this kind of studies. He joined the Consulate General of Pakistan, Toronto as Consul General as January 5, 2020. Mr. Abdul Hameed has recently served as Minister in Pakistan High Commission, New Delhi. Earlier, he worked in permanent missions of Pakistan in the United Nations, New York for 5 years, and also represented Pakistan in the Security Council for 2 years when Pakistan was elected as a non-permanent member of the council. He has a key role in the development of Canada-Pakistan R&D Council and many such initiatives in Toronto. He champions the recent initiative of science diplomacy taken by government of Pakistan. So here I just, half minute, I will give my own introduction to, and then we'll ask Mr. Abdul Hameed how and where it want to. I had a friend in Foreign Services who I told about our initiative early last year. So it's been 1.5 years probably. And he told me about that there's in Foreign Services, there is a section for science diplomacy. Maybe I'm paraphrasing, but I said, okay, I would like to be introduced to the head. And he said, okay, head is my friend, but he's going to Staff College in Quetta. And the new person is, when he will take charge, I'll let you know. So anyway, we got busy with our initiatives and, it was very exciting the whole last year and start of this year. So now when I heard this, I was really pleasant and pleasantly surprised, looking forward to learn about what this science diplomacy is. And it seems like a very neat initiative and very aligned with what in APPNA Merit we are envisioning and doing. So with that, Mr. Abdul Hameed, please go ahead and tell us about all what science diplomacy is about.
Thank you very much. I'm thankful to Shahid Rafiq Saab for nice words, Dr. Babar Rao and Danish Saab. Of course, I have been benefiting from your debates and your discussions, even as attendee for so many months now. And I'm really grateful for extending this invitation to me. Healthcare innovation, merit healthcare innovation, entrepreneurship webinars are really a source of inspiration for many of us who think on the same lines in different parts of the world, particularly in Canada. Can you see my presentation at your end? Or?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the recent initiatives of government of Pakistan in the area of science diplomacy in the next, say, 35 minutes. It is a new area in terms of discourse. It is a fluid concept. It means different things to different people. Scientists interpret it in a different manner. Diplomats mean something different. Therefore, first slide, I have quoted a report of 2010 where there are 3 shades of meaning of this term. Science in diplomacy, which means that science can provide advice to inform and support foreign policy objectives of countries. And we see it all the time in the United Nations. There are so many cutting-edge debates, but diplomats have to depend on their scientific academies back home to articulate right positions there. Diplomacy for science, which means that international scientific cooperation can be facilitated. Academy of Sciences in different parts of the world can be linked by embassies, and MOUs can be finalized and negotiated so that interlinkages between different scientific institutions in various parts of the world can help us overcome, understand the global issues. And science for diplomacy is also very important and strong concept. And there have been very interesting examples in the history of diplomacy when countries were not talking to each other, but their scientists were talking to each other. And countries had hostile positions, but their scientists were cooperating because their focus is on rational inquiry. Their focus is on those issues which transcend national borders, like climate action, like law of the sea beyond areas of national jurisdiction. In those cases, ultimately, scientists helped bring countries closer to each other despite crises. For example, in literature, one finds a very interesting example that after Suez crisis, UK and in 1950s, UK and Egypt were not talking to each other. But British archaeologists were working on certain sites in Egypt, and that created a kind of thaw after the crisis, because there was some kind of warmth in the heart of Egyptians because of their attachment with their ancient culture, and British archaeologists helped them understand their past. So this is the last shade. Scope of my today's presentation is that the timing of the recent initiative of science diplomacy. Why now? And what are its objectives?
Hamid, if we can put it to the presentation mode, it will be bigger, the words on your slides.
Let me.
Yeah, on the bottom side here, that cup, I think. bottom right. No, yeah, that right there, bottom, that the screen icon next to the volume. Yeah, next to, yeah, here, more on the left side. Walid, can you help?
Can you see it
Sir,
now? No.
please press on left side from current slide. Slideshow from current side.
Yeah,
Can you?
there you go. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And of course, I was talking the scope of the presentation, that what are the areas of focus and how is science diplomacy initiative identifying stakeholders at both at national and international level, and what are ultimately its recent activities under this initiative, and it will be followed by conclusion. But I must indicate what is not included in it, and which is actually a huge part of science diplomacy. And if I focus on these issues which are on this slide, then I would need the full day. Therefore, I would just highlight in this slide that, for example, Pakistan has been taking positions and giving statements in World Health Assembly, WHO Executive Board, Polio Partners Group, NAM Health Ministerial Meeting, Global Report on Effectiveness to Assistive Technology Consultation, consultation on the benefits of developing a WHO convention, agreement, or other international instrument on pandemic preparedness and responses, on the gaps and shortcomings in existing global health security architecture, its governance, its legal framework, and how challenges and capacity constraints are affecting it. Vaccine nationalism, COVID-19 as a case study for preventing and responding to future pandemics. But these all issues are a big part of science diplomacy at multilateral level, but these are not part of today's discussion. Similarly, Pakistan's positions and statements on climate change at international summits and the Second Committee of United Nations General Assembly. Pakistan's position and statements on arms control and disarmament, International Atomic Energy Agency, in the Conference on Disarmament, on Biological Weapons Convention, Chemical Weapons Convention. All these conventions, implementation depends on their verification mechanisms, and verification mechanisms are based on science. No diplomat can actually verify whether these conventions are being implemented or not. This is 100% informed by scientists. Similarly, the debates on weapons of mass destruction, huge debate, cutting edge debate is going on in the United Nations on weaponization of outer space or cyber weapons. What law will govern emerging disruptive technologies? These are all areas of diplomacy which depend hugely on scientific discourse. But today I will not be focusing on them. Same is the case with Pakistan's position and statements on intellectual property and innovation related debates in the UN, in the General Assembly of World Intellectual Property Rights Organization, Committee on Development and Intellectual Property. Similarly, the utilization of global commons like international waters beyond areas of national jurisdiction, and the regulation of cyberspace. If you want, I can hold a separate session on these issues, but today I will not be focusing on it. I just wanted to clarify it at this stage, because these are central themes of science diplomacy at multilateral level. But I must also indicate that science diplomacy might be a new term, but science has been used in our national and international articulation of interests, in our negotiation of treaties, in a big way, and all our diplomatic endeavors were based on some huge scientific discourse. For example, Indus Water Treaty, perhaps it is just the best example of resolving conflict without violence in hostile South Asia. But it was possible due to our technical teams, It had a huge scientific component, which enabled the diplomats and political leaders to finalize it. Similarly, nuclear testing in South Asia has helped us stabilize South Asia, and it was, of course, based on our scientists' work. Not many people know that Pakistan claim for continental shelf was accepted in 2013-14 in the United Nations. So actually, Pakistan has now resources in the sea beyond its national jurisdiction, almost a whole province in terms of area, and it was made possible because of our scientists who gave us input to fight our case there in the United Nations. So what I mean to say that Indus Water Treaty was signed in the 1960s, but the terminology of science diplomacy came now and during the last 20 years in the literature. But science was always being used for diplomatic purposes in the past as well. Now, come to the question that why now? As you must have seen in my slide on multilateral initiatives, Pakistan needs to participate effectively in the global science and technology ecosystem. To implement SDGs, all of which have a strong science and technology component, and I will come to SDGs later on. We can't have meaningful debate on the implementation of sustainable development goals if we don't understand this, the mechanism of implementing them through science and technology breakthroughs. The development in science and technology are outpacing the capacity to regulate them at national and international levels. This is also a big concern for policymakers, for regulators, that new developments in science and technology are going at the great speed, and the regulators and laws for those developments are far behind. Therefore, all regulators, all policymakers need a very big interface with scientists. And latest in science, technology, and innovation, especially digital technologies, proved to be the lifeline for many households and businesses during COVID-19. But there is a concern that the current digital divide might turn into development divide, and it will increase the gap between poor and rich countries. So therefore, it is imperative for developing countries like Pakistan to understand the importance of science diplomacy, to establish linkages between academies of science in developing countries and developed countries, to establish linkages between their own scientists and diaspora scientists, so that this divide is not further widened, rather it should be reduced. What are objectives of the recent initiative of science diplomacy of Ministry of Foreign Affairs? I would briefly touch them. Of course, main objective is the socio-economic development, utilization of scientific collaborations for implementation of sustainable development goals of 2030, strengthening science and technology collaborations at bilateral level and multilateral level, and supporting the country's own science and technology landscape. And one thing that's very close to my heart, engagement of scientific diasporas, creating synergies between local scientific talent pool and our scientific diasporas. This is very important, and we have done some work in this respect in Canada. I'm sure what APPNA Merit is doing, it is 100% the same thing, and I have been benefiting from their ideas, and I at this forum I want to acknowledge it. And another objective is that's why perhaps Shahid Rafiq was saying that when he was told that Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a science diplomacy initiative, and he felt that we are doing the similar thing. Yes, that is true feeling, that is right feeling, and institutional linkages, linking Pakistani centers of excellence with foreign centers of excellence in science and technology. We want to bring it as one of the main jobs of our embassies abroad, that they should not only go to our ambassadors and high commissioners and consul generals, should not only go to chambers of commerce in host countries. They should also go to science and technology excellence centers, and then try to link them with the similar institutions back home and facilitating technology transfers. We are not naive that it will be easy, but at least we should identify our needs for capacity building, and we should map our own national innovation system. And the last thing is, of course, popularization of science. This is very important. In the science diplomacy literature, they are saying that earlier concert and museum, these were the venues of cultural diplomacy, and singer and poet and artist was the hero. We in science diplomacy need to make a seminar, a webinar, a scientist, a hero, a lab, a venue of diplomacy. So that is the idea of we need popularization of science as a part of diplomacy. That is very important. In fact, in Pakistan, this Khwarizmi Science Mela has been recently held, and we appreciate it a lot. And we are increasingly acknowledging our scientists in different capacities. I'm very happy to note that your last speaker in last Saturday, Dr. Zulfikar Bhutta, was acknowledged by Canadian government for his contribution. And those kind of acknowledgements for heroes in science will help us popularization of science. And other idea is to for science diplomacy division in Ministry of Foreign Affairs to act as a focal point, as a liaison between national science and technology stakeholders and international partners. And in terms of national level stakeholders, first comes the Higher Education Commission, because it focuses on so much on research. We had in the last presentation of Dr. Bhutta, he had indicated how much Higher Education Commission has been funding research. He has been part of health research committees, ComSets and other universities, ECO Science Foundation, intergovernmental organizations, science and technology institutions in Pakistan, research and development projects in Pakistan. Our science diplomacy division was coordinating with Pakistan COVID-19 portal. They were also coordinating with regulatory authorities related to technology transfer and science and technology technical procurement. Security Exchange Commission of Pakistan started portal, SARC SMEs portal. Of course, we understand that not much is going on in SARC because of issues between regional countries. But this idea is there, and anytime the relationship between among the SARC members improves, this is one of a basic agenda item there. And they're also working on exporter directory of Pakistan. And as I said earlier, main in terms of areas: climate, energy, water, agriculture, poverty reduction, health, and cyber. These are the areas of focus of science diplomacy in Pakistan. And as you can note, that almost all of them are very much consistent with 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, because those relate to poverty, hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, climate action, and reduced inequality, and sustainable cities and communities, and life below water. That's very important. So this initiative of science diplomacy is very much consistent with both national developmental needs of Pakistan and international trends and rather international sustainable development goals. Now comes the question that you have been talking so much about, this science diplomacy initiative of Pakistan, recent initiative, but what have you done till now? So where can we find information about it? The best source of information on it is Ministry of Foreign Affairs Science Diplomacy Division's Twitter account, and it is very accessible. And I have here indicated some examples, but these are not current ones. These are not big examples. These are just random examples, because whatever is going on in science diplomacy from Pakistani side is documented in that Twitter handle. And I read just from this handle recent developments, just in addition to whatever I have noted in the slide. For example, Foreign Secretary launches first issue of its Science Diplomacy Journal in collaboration with OIC Comsec. 17 articles covering diverse topics on emerging technologies, popularization, international scientific collaborations by interdisciplinary contributors are included. And this was the first issue which was launched, which was exclusively focusing on science diplomacy. And then we have this Dutch firm Harto has opened its office in NSTP, National Science and Technology Park. Since its inception in 1974, Harto, Netherlands has been working on the best lighting solution for the agricultural sector. Similarly, Institute of Strategic Studies Islamabad organized a webinar on big data, a case of Pakistan. Online reselling startup Markaz Technologies raises $2.5 million in seed funding, another startup success. Another tweet is very interesting. Yeah. WHO Pakistan has accelerated the efforts to consolidate and build on the existing capacities by strengthening national manufacturers and regulators for indigenous vaccine production. Security Exchange Commission of Pakistan invites you to attend webinar on third cohort regulatory sandbox focused on eligibility criteria, preferred areas of third cohort and evaluation process. There are so many, for example, our ambassador in Norway is hosting a joint investment webinar on 8 June, which will provide an interactive opportunity for businesses in various sectors, including agriculture and IT. So, in different parts of the world, same is the case with some developments in Turkey. These are activities. I think these activities were taking place earlier, before 2019 and 20, when this initiative was taken also. But this science diplomacy initiative has consolidated them. Now you can see that whatever is happening in the area of science, there is a one place to go, and you can just monitor it. And I yesterday, for the sake of this presentation, I talked again to our headquarters and asked, what have you done in regional cooperation? Because I had heard in the last presentation of Dr. Zulfikar Bhutta, he said that there has been lip service to science diplomacy, but in terms of regional collaboration, there has been not much. And that is true that is true in the sense of collaboration between scientists of Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. But Pakistan provided $3 million assistance to Nepal, Maldives, and Sri Lanka during the COVID-19. Pakistan is offered, not Pakistan, 200 scholarships were offered to science students from Germany and Palestine through a consortium. And Pakistan's share in that consortium was 50 scholarships. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in collaboration with the OIC Standing Committee on Scientific and Technological Collaboration, it is called COMSTEC, launched its Science Diplomacy Journal that's already mentioned. Ministry of Foreign Affairs and High Commission of Pakistan in Australia held a virtual science summit on creating synergies with Scientific Diaspora, Australia, in collaboration with Ministry of Science and Technology, NIH, National Science Technology Park, Khwarizmi Science Foundation, and Special Technology Zone Authority of Pakistan. The first round of bilateral dialogue after the initiative of science diplomacy on climate change and science was held between Pakistan and ROK. Pakistan Institute of Engineering and Applied Sciences has announced 10 master level scholarships in fields like medical physics, radiation physics, nuclear medicine, radiation and medical oncology to candidates from member states of the OIC through ComStack. Recently, ambassadors from 4 African countries, including Tunisia, South Africa, Sudan, visited 2 prestigious institutes of Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission, namely Pakistan Institute of Engineering and Applied Sciences and Pakistan Institute of Nuclear Science and Technology. And during those interactions, our Pakistan Institute of Engineering and Applied Sciences offered all kind of assistance to these 4 countries, and these are not Tunisia and South Africa have their own good scientific good standing in the area of science and technology, and the ambassador was thrilled with the idea, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs also held a hybrid event on agriculture technology related innovation for sustainable agriculture in collaboration with Switzerland. It brought together almost 100 science and technology related stakeholders from Pakistan and Switzerland. Ministry of Foreign Affairs also hosted a coordination meeting on international cooperation and partnership vaccine production. It was co-chaired by Foreign Secretary Suhail Mahmood and Executive Director of National Institute of Health, Professor Dr. Ahmed Ikram. And almost everybody who was relevant there, they participated there. And it was such a successful meeting that they are so positive that with the help of international institutions, they can take next steps in vaccine production. Several MOUs between Pakistani universities and international universities of good repute have been finalized. And efforts in this field have resulted in increase in postgraduate science scholarship for Pakistani students. And Science Diplomacy Division is also promoting international partnerships for public and private sector in health, agriculture, biotechnology, and efficient management of water resources. And the most important thing I'm going to mention now, which is a diaspora outreach research and innovation network. This initiative has been taken to register overseas Pakistani science and technology and innovation professionals that will help create a diaspora outreach research and innovation network. This databasing and networking effort will allow us to create research and innovation linkages. If you go to Ministry of Foreign Affairs website and Science Diplomacy Initiatives portal, there is a form. You can just fill it. And at this moment, more than 5,000 professionals from different parts of the world have registered there. It is just a kind of census that you are Pakistan origin, you are a scientist, and you want to be included in a networking arrangement. That's all. Because as you remember in the last presentation of Dr. Zulfikar Bhutta, he said that we know that how many Pakistani expatriates are abroad in North America, in Europe, in the Gulf, but we don't have exact data that how many scientists, how many PhDs, how many professionals in natural sciences are there. And this diaspora outreach research and innovation network perhaps help us fill the gap. If you are inclined to do so, please, I would request again that you take part in this initiative. And there is a web page of science diplomacy. It will provide one-stop resource to the science technology innovation landscape of the country, while also showcasing science and technology products and services portfolio from the relevant institutions. It's very important because you can't imagine in terms of perceptions when there are so many negative news in the New York Times, CNN, here, there about Pakistan. But when we say that we are holding this conference on science, on a cutting edge concept, it helps us even to dispel the negative perceptions also. It is not. I'm talking at a very superficial level. Even that utility of science conference is huge. And I must say that two institutions stand out which have done a lot in terms of establishing international linkages. LUMS and International Center for Chemical and Biological Sciences, University of Karachi. Of course, this institution was initiated by Dr. Salim Uzma Siddiqui, and it has been associated with science. More than 100 MOUs have been signed. They have cooperation agreements with more than 80 institutions around the world. Now, a few words as an example of science diplomacy about Canada-Pakistan Research and Development Council. I'm based in Toronto, so I might be biased in favor of it, but it is true that this Canada-Pakistan Research and Development Council has given ideas to Pakistan's science diplomacy initiative at initial level. And of course, there were people receptive in Islamabad who developed those ideas further and who established collaboration with national level institutions. But I must introduce Canada-Pakistan Research and Development Council because it's non-governmental, non-profit organization. Its main objectives are promotion of joint research, facilitation of knowledge, knowledge creation, and health research as well, because most of its members are doctors as well. It has working groups which focus on health sciences, life and natural sciences, IT and cybersecurity, robotics and artificial intelligence, engineering and fintech. And it has successfully mobilized the community of scientists, because this is very important, because there are so many organizations which take initiatives, but nobody pays attention to them. But somehow Canada-Pakistan Research and Development Council has got the imagination of scientists in Canada and professionals. And they have implemented a few projects relating to clinical trials and research in Pakistan. And perhaps Sayyid Uzair Irfan might endorse me in this, that he organized so many webinars during the 2 years of COVID on health issues. We got in those webinars all major policymakers in those areas, major industry actors in those areas. In the pharmaceutical industry, and in education, we got Dr. Ataur Rahman, and in case of regulation, we got DRAP, Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan, and their input was so useful for because sometimes being in North America, we underestimate the potential of Pakistani professionals who are working there, and this direct interaction during these 2 years was very useful. Now, it is very interesting that if you browse through the first science diplomacy journal that has been published, it had peer-reviewed articles, and what areas our young scientists and our young diplomats are focusing on. They are saying that fusion energy could provide a future source of non-carbon emitting electricity generation. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen in 2050 if it takes place. But our scientists and our diplomats are aware of it. That is one area where the whole humanity can perhaps pin hopes for resolving energy issues, for clean energy. Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission has established a research group named National Tokaram Fusion Program in 2007, consisting of plasma physicists and engineers throughout the country. Also, in those articles I was happy to note that our scientists and our diplomats have identified emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, 3D laser printing, drones, biometrics, nanotechnology for future cooperation with their international counterparts for both learning and collaboration. And they were fully aware that Pakistan's population is increasing at fast pace. and the issue of food insecurity is staring at us. So they had discussions about new genetic technologies, new physical enabling technologies in agri-tech, and new developments in food tech. And these are very interesting. But these are not the areas, for example, for the country immediately where clean drinking water, electricity is an issue. So we have to keep our foot rooted in the land of which we are talking of. At the conclusion, again, I would say that technology has increased the gap between countries since the Industrial Revolution. We, as a developing country, have no option but not to allow the repetition of the last 200 years in science and technology. If we have to develop, we have to focus on science and technology. And in technology can be both. It can be a cause of increasing the gap between rich and poor countries, and it can also be a supporter of the developing countries to reduce this gap. So we are looking forward to the latter option. And and of course, the whole initiative of science diplomacy is emphasizing the need for Pakistani policymakers, Pakistani leadership, that they must create policy incentives that increase the investment and pace of industrialization, so that we are not left behind in the next 200 years. Now, I would end it here just by referring to this question, that is the current science diplomacy initiative enough? No, not at all. There's so much need to do more. Is it a step in the right direction? Yes, it is. Thank you. I am open to whatever questions I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul Hameed sir. I don't know if there's a echo. So that was really very informative. So before I go to our panelist, Dr. Babar Rao, I would like you to address. So basically, as we saw and we expected, obviously, that the science is not just health sciences or medicine. So it includes agriculture and IT and many others. And of course, science initiative and science diplomacy would, take every science into account. But here at APPNA, we are more focused on healthcare and medicine. Although I attended one meeting in Pakistan Embassy in Washington, D.C., when Dr. HEC chair, Dr. Tariq Banori was here, and Ambassador Asad Majid invited, I think 3 years ago or something like that. So there was a initiative at that time to make a body which encompasses body of diaspora, which encompasses all sciences, right? So it did not happen, right? And to my knowledge, there's no body as big and as active as APPNA for diaspora scientists overseas in around the world from Pakistan. So while that is very, very essential, and CRDP, our Canada Council, Dr. Zaid is also working on that. In the meantime, we have this very organized and I would say powerful body of a big chunk of healthcare professionals, doctors, healthcare scientists in North America. And we collaborate with UK and Australia all the time. So we have the capacity to take healthcare professionals with us. Having said that, I would like to very pinpoint to this, that what can a healthcare initiative person or startup person can do to knock on the door of science diplomacy? Like there was a talk about the previous government one window operation, but I don't think I saw that practically. We had some initiative and we had hurdles on many times, and we use our own link and own connections and may get over them. But I think as a general policy and as a general rule and a progress, there has to be a one window where anybody can knock and it opens.
Do you want me to respond, or Dr. Babar?
Sure. Go ahead, and then I'll ask Dr. Babar his question.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you that there should be somebody that connects all scientific disciplines, and not only health professionals. Of course, APPNA is one of the well-networked, most powerful, very resourceful organization that has contributed a lot in the health sector in Pakistan, and we acknowledge it. But there is a need, at least at national level in the United States or in North America, to have a body of diaspora scientists that includes all fields. And as you might have noted, at not such a large scale, but our Canada-Pakistan Research and Development Council is actually doing the same. And one window operation for any kind of investment or any kind of initiative or any kind of implementation of ideas from diaspora communities to in Pakistan, that is a good idea, and it has there have been commitment earlier from highest level in Pakistani government to facilitate such initiatives. At this stage, I would say that this most important office for you is your embassy in Washington, or for Canadian professional Pakistani embassy in Ottawa, because they speak on your behalf, and they can knock the door on your behalf. And if we go through that channel, then they can knock all doors on your behalf, and you are going only to the embassy. This is one way in this, and the second one is that we can forward this proposal to Science Diplomacy Initiative, that they should create some mechanisms that whenever proposals are coming from various parts of the world, because they are now very much networked with local scientific institutions in Pakistan, that this proposal is coming, and they how will they implement it? And not only scientific institutions, rather all policy areas, whether it's in the case of health, Dr. Amir Ikram is part of it, whether it's in area of education, Higher Education Commission is part of it, whether it's in area of climate action, new environment minister is very much active. If you're following her on Twitter, so and they are responsive. And the real thing is that it is very hard for any policymaker or public policy official in these days of social media, not to be responsive. And but we can surely forward this thing. I must add one thing, that 5 days ago, our Science Diplomacy Twitter handle noted that the Association of Physicians of Pakistani Descent of North America has organized a series of webinars on healthcare, innovation, and entrepreneurship. All recordings can be viewed here. So it means that they are following whatever is happening in any part of the world, and they are posting it. And I have just seen it, just browsing their handle. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's great if we, so embassy, as you know, I mean, there's obviously everyone knows there's a structure. Ambassador is usually busy, obviously, with so many responsibilities. Then there are secretaries, and so if the diaspora knows that in each embassy or consulate, who is responsible for the science diplomacy, whether it's a third secretary or first secretary or a different person, that really would be great, because then you can develop a personal relationship with that person, and you just pick up the phone or text or and that you cannot do with ambassador. So saying that contact your embassy is great, but I think embassies, all embassies overseas should have a science diplomat designated so that the community knows that this is the person to contact. So that's my suggestion.
I just want to add that it's already being implemented in certain missions of Pakistan. For example, in China, we have, and in not only in case of Pakistan, as a diplomatic practice, so many countries have now created posts of scientific attaches, which are the real diplomats who coordinate science-related cooperation between two countries or multilateral institutions. For example, in Pakistan Embassy Beijing, we have a scientific attaché who focuses on cooperation in the science. And I agree with you that in important missions like Washington and in European capitals, we should also have scientific attaches. Of course, we have scientific attaches in Rome, for example, but that focuses on FAO, etc. There's multilateral, not bilateral. In bilateral missions also, we need to have scientific attaches, or in the absence of scientific attaches, full-fledged, we should have a certain diplomatic officer who is designated as scientific focal point on scientific cooperation. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's great. China is an important country, a big country, and I think U.S. Embassy should have follow the suit and next in line to have a scientific attaché. With that, I'll turn to our panelist, Dr. Babar Rao, as I already introduced her. He's a dermatologist in New York City, a professor at Rutgers and professor at Cornell University, and he is also co-chair of APPNA Merit with me. Babar, go ahead with your question. Babar, we lost you, I think. Yeah, Babar, are you there?
Yeah, but I think the question people are asked in the question section, where like, is there a way for people to get in touch or get some help? Can you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, a little bit difficulty. Do you want me to come back in 2 minutes? I wanted
yeah,
to...
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Just take the question and ignore
Yeah.
me. My internet is not good.
Right. I think that's a connection problem. So I would like if,
Okay.
so the one question from Zahid Ali is that, obviously he's proposing that he would like to help in cybersecurity and IT areas. And so obviously we will get in touch with him because obviously healthcare IT is also a big section. And so that would be a valuable resource. And Imran Mirza, our friend in Calgary, pathologist, professor of pathology, says, what steps are being taken by Pakistan to bridge the divide of digital? Like you pointed out, that it's really such a big thing that it will divide the world in underdeveloped and developed countries on that basis.
Yeah. Thank you. I really think that this is the most important question, and in fact, the whole initiative of science diplomacy is one of responses to create awareness about it, among both policymakers, diplomats, and academia and experts. And um, perhaps the best thing that can be done, that should be done, and that is on the radar of Higher Education Commission, is to increase the number of scientists in Pakistan, to increase the investment in science and technology area, to pool the resources from international level, and that is why COMSTEC, OIC's body on science and technology, that is President of Pakistan is chairing it, and that's an effort to pool the resources in that area. Pakistan is very active in ECO Science Foundation as well, but I must also say that there is much needs to be done in that area as well.
All right. So the other thing is that so obviously we are very closely collaborating with Uzair, Dr. Uzair in Toronto, and he's been phenomenal in this initiative that we had for healthcare initiative webinar series, which started last March and continuing for the second year. And we had an in-person meeting in Rawalpindi Medical University December of last year. And we are planning to have another meeting, I think in Lahore and Multan, where the APPNA winter meeting will take place. And this summer, so everyone who's listening and can join, obviously we'll invite Consular Abdul Hameed Sahab as well. We are having a big symposium on Saturday. I think it will be the 17th of July. That will focus on healthcare initiatives in Pakistan and startups in Pakistan. And it is in collaboration with Open. As you know, Open is Overseas Pakistani network of entrepreneur network. So we are collaborating with any and everyone who has anything to do with startups, bringing foreign investments, bringing foreign expertise, scientific on healthcare, and encouraging and supporting Pakistani scientists, companies, as well as creating jobs in new initiatives. So I think APPNA Merit is very proud to do that in the history of Merit, and also APPNA, because the initiative started with Merit, but the whole APPNA physicians are behind this and very excited. So I think the thing is that we started this excitement, we started this initiative, but for it to be really sustainable and remain exciting is the response from the Pakistan. So as you know, Pakistan government, Pakistan politics changes, and unfortunately, most of the time, the initiatives that are started by one government are shut down or put on the back burner by the next government. But I think we feel that if foreign service, which is obviously a more continuous or have continuity in it, if foreign service really take it to heart that we have to link Pakistani scientists, and in particular our case, healthcare scientists and healthcare professionals to Pakistan, and whatever they do, whatever way they can support, they can knock the doors for us. I think if that can be done, even so, we can forget about the governments and big political parties and all those things, which of course is important and continuing. But as APPNA has a continuity for the past 45 years, Foreign Service, of course, being part of establishment, has a continuity. So we are requesting that if, I know that you are very sincere, and we have seen a track record and and your responsibility and your presentation speaks for that. We request that we, at least in Toronto, I'm sure you are there, so the Canadian don't have a problem. But with the new ambassador here, I met him, Mr. Masood Khan, in a couple of functions. And if we can really have a scientific attaché in Washington, D.C., that would be really, really, really useful. So that's my request. Let me see if Babar, you have any other question, or then I ask Mr. Abdul Hameed Khan for his last thoughts, because we are almost over time. Yeah, Mesa, please go ahead.
Yes, I agree with you that APPNA has played an important role in health sector in developing not only a network but also making concrete progress on the ground as well in certain initiatives. And there is no doubt that Washington is such an important mission that a scientific attaché or a diplomat with designated diplomat for scientific cooperation should be there. And I have worked with Ambassador Masood Khan. He is a very good professional, and I would forward it to him, and he will surely take action on it if APPNA is such a resourceful organization. But if you need to fix any meeting in Pakistan Embassy, Washington, with the ambassador, I can organize that one also, so that this issue is 100% settled. And I also agree with you that consistency is a big issue in public policy, particularly when democratic transitions take place. But ultimately, as I said in my presentation also, that countries like Pakistan with huge population and resource constraints have no option but to focus on science and technology for their future generations. So it is a policy imperative. It is not a kind of leisurely policy choice. So I'm sure whatever the government is there, they have to follow this thing in any way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I think it was a great session. We learned about what science diplomacy is, and what the diaspora can do and connect with this. All for joining, especially our attendees. Always a pleasure to have you on these webinars on Saturdays, and without you, they cannot be successful. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.